The engines hadn't roared yet. The street lay still, almost unnaturally so, under the high, pale afternoon sun. A small boy stood at the curb, trembling as though the world had suddenly gone cold, even in the brightness. His gray hoodie hung loosely, his jeans were scuffed, and his hands were clenched tightly at his sides. In front of him knelt a man, broad arms tattooed and scarred, telling tales of roads traveled and battles fought. His leather vest bore the emblem of the Hells Angels, the patches sewn on worn with pride. His name was Ryder Hale. Behind him stood 5 of his brothers, men of iron, men of grit, silent, and watching the boy as though they themselves had seen a ghost. The boy's eyes filled with tears as he looked up at Ryder. His voice was barely a whisper. "They took my sister," the words broke in the air. In that instant, the quiet street no longer felt safe. It felt like the opening of something unstoppable. If you believe in kindness, second chances, and the power of standing up for what's right, please take a moment to like, comment, share, and subscribe to Kindness Corner. These are the stories that remind us that even the roughest souls can have the biggest hearts. Ryder didn't speak right away. He simply looked at the boy. His name would later come out as Evan, and he saw something he hadn't seen in years. Helplessness. The deep kind that cuts straight to the bone. Behind him, his brothers exchanged uneasy glances. These were men who'd seen a lot. Accidents, fights, loss. But the sight of a child in tears on a quiet street always hit differently. Slowly, Ryder rose. His boots pressed into the warm pavement as he placed one large hand gently on the boy's shoulder. "Start from the beginning," he said quietly. Evan's voice trembled as he told his story. His sister Mara, only 12, had been taken. A dark van, 2 men. It happened near the park on the other side of town just an hour ago. His mother was at work. He had been playing with her. He ran after them until his lungs burned, screaming her name. Nobody stopped. Nobody helped. The police hadn't arrived yet. He'd come running, his only hope that someone, anyone, would listen, would care. Then he saw the row of bikes parked like an army ready for war. He didn't know these men. He just hoped they would help. When he finished, Ryder's jaw had hardened like stone. His brothers didn't need words. They saw it in his eyes. Steel met purpose. Ryder addressed his men with a voice low and clipped. "We ride." That was all. That was everything. And just like that, the stillness shattered. The men moved as one. Leather creaked. Engines thundered to life. The air filled with the roar of motorcycles. Ryder strapped the boy onto the back of his own bike, securing him safely. Evan's small hands gripped the man's vest. His heart pounded, not out of fear but hope. They took off in formation, the sound echoing through the quiet suburban streets. Curtains parted. Mothers paused. Gardeners looked up. Somewhere, someone whispered, "The angels were riding again." They rode for nearly 20 minutes, weaving through traffic with precision born of loyalty. A man named Vince, one of the riders' contacts, called in a tip. A black van seen speeding past a local gas station on Route 9, heading toward the old industrial lots by the docks. That area was familiar to the bikers and haunted by wrong things done before. When they arrived, the engines cut off like a drumbeat ending. Silence pressed down. The van sat near a loading bay, its back doors ajar. Ryder heard the faint sound of a girl's muffled cry. Without hesitation, he signaled his men. They spread out, silent, instinctive. One moved to the back of the van, another to the sides. Ryder advanced head-on, tattoos gleaming under daylight, his eyes hard. The men behind the van froze when they saw him. He wasn't the hunted. Within seconds, the bikers had the captors pinned. Ryder yanked open the back door and found Mara, frightened, wrists tied, eyes wide in disbelief. Ryder didn't speak. He reached out and untied her gently, his movements careful, almost fatherly. "You're safe now," he murmured, his voice soft but certain. Evan ran to her the moment she was free, wrapping his arms around her as if he would never let go again. For a long moment, none of the bikers spoke. They stood and watched the 2 kids hold each other, knowing that beneath all their tough exteriors, this is why they existed. Not for power, not for rebellion, but for moments like this. Minutes later, the police arrived, drawn by the disturbance. The bikers did not argue or boast. They simply nodded and stepped aside, letting the officers handle what came next. As they stood by their bikes, Ryder looked to his brothers. Quiet. The kind of quiet that comes when adrenaline fades and purpose settles in. "No one should ever feel alone in this world," he said at last. "Not a kid. Not ever." They rode back through streets now bright and clean. Evan stood on the sidewalk beside his sister and mother, just arriving in tears. He waved as they passed. His mother mouthed, "Thank you," over and over, but the engine roar drowned the words. It didn't matter. They heard them in their hearts. Hours later, as the sun dipped low, the bikes were parked in perfect line outside Ryder's house. The men sat in the shade, silent but proud. There was no celebration, just peace. Ryder leaned back against his seat, eyes closed, replaying the little voice in his mind. "They took my sister." He smiled faintly, the kind of smile that belongs to a man who knows he did something right. If this story moved you, if it reminded you that kindness often comes from the most unexpected hearts, please like, share, and subscribe to Kindness Corner. These moments matter because even in a world of noise, humanity still speaks softly and acts boldly. Before we finish, tell us in the comments, what would you have done if you were in the writer's place? Would you have ridden out too? That day, the Hells Angels didn't wait for someone to tell them what was right. They didn't wait for headlines or applause. They just rode, not for glory, but for a little boy's whisper that reminded them who they truly were. And as the engines faded into the distance, the world was reminded of something powerful. Kindness doesn't always wear a halo. Sometimes it wears leather.